In this video, I review Kill Team 2024. But before we get into today's video, just want to share with you what the GGGGs are for this month. Each month, Bob the Poleholder picks some of my Patreon supporters to receive gratitude gifts. And for this month of November of 2024, we have this GW Ravaged Land Shattered Storm Vault box of terrain and $100 to go towards a crowdfunding campaign, which my Patreon supporters are currently voting upon. Go ahead and use the link below to go to my Patreon page where you can find out more information on how you can get in on this month's gratitude gifts. So back in 2018 was when the current iteration, first edition of Kill Team came out. And I did a video showcasing how Games Workshop is sort of like that hot but crazy girlfriend that you continue to go back to even though they destroy your life over and over again and take all of your money. Similarly, my relationship with Games Workshop continues to be like that. They do something to just make me really angry and pissed off, and I vow I'll never buy any of their products again, but then they come out with something that I just can't resist to get again just because it looks so awesome. Well, back then, I did get the first edition of Kill Team, painted up a bunch of factions, tried it out, ended up not really liking the rule set because it was just too complicated. So when they announced in 2021 that they were coming out with a revised edition of Kill Team, I did buy the Octarius box set with the orcs and the core with the hopes that they were going to adopt some of the simpler rules like Warcry into Kill Team. But I was disappointed. Even though they shifted and made the rules fairly different from the first edition, it was still fairly complex. So now in 2024, since they have come out with the third edition, what do I think about this rule set? So I did buy the Hivestorm box set, but instead of building and painting the two factions that is inside of that, I ended up just painting up the Novitiates in Black Pink edition to be able to play that. And one of my coworkers also wanted to try it out, so we ended up playing together. So one of the primary reasons why I wanted to try out Kill Team really was because I found out that there were solo and co-op rules now with this edition. I thought that maybe by being able to play co-op, we would be able to play more often, or that it would be more enjoyable rather than trying to find loopholes or trying to find the most OP faction that we could play, which sometimes annoys me with competitive play. So having the co-op version really was what made me try this version again. So let me go ahead and first talk about the things that I think they did right with this new edition compared to the second edition before I get into whether or not it is still a hot but crazy girlfriend. So one of the big pluses is that all of the factions and data cards and faction rules are available for free online. Go ahead and use the link below if you're interested in downloading all of those faction cards. Every single one of the current factions are available for free. So I think that's a big win that you can find that. Now the rules aren't free. There is a rules light version, but it's not really that helpful. You do need the full rule set, and the only way you can get that is by purchasing the rule book. Some of the rules are more simplified, although I'm going to talk later on whether or not they're simple enough, but they did simplify some of the more complicated rules, although some of them still remain. Also, there are different ways to get victory points other than camping on the objectives. With the second iteration, basically it didn't really matter how many of the other operatives that you killed. As long as you were able to maintain your position on the objectives, you were able to get enough victory points to win. Now you have multiple avenues and options for how you can get victory points, which I think is a bonus. Equipment, it can now be shared across your whole faction. You don't have to assign it to individual operatives, and I think that makes it a lot easier. You don't have to do as much record keeping. And they went back to doing inches rather than these crazy geometric shapes that really meant nothing. So going back to numbered inches on these rulers and throughout the rulebook is definitely a bonus. And they did stick with the close combat method from the second edition, which I actually enjoy. I think that's one of the intriguing and different kinds of ways to resolve combat, where both sides will roll and you can choose whether or not you're going to do damage with your dice or whether or not you're going to parry your opponent's attack on you. So there's a little bit more strategy where you're able to spend individual dice when you're in close combat. So I think that's a really unique and fun way to resolve close combat. So now that I've talked a little bit about ways that they have actually improved the game or kept components that I like, I do want to switch over to the things that I really don't like, and how even though this girlfriend is really hot, she's still super crazy, and I will give my verdict at the end of the video whether or not I regret going back into this relationship. But first, right off the bat, and this is going to be no surprise, you know, GW is a gold digger girlfriend, basically wants you for your money, doesn't even apologize for that, is straight up front about that. That is certainly the case with this edition, where the base box is now $230. And as per Games Workshop, I don't think they're going to continue to produce the good deal that the base box is, even at $230. So if you want the base box, you do need to grab it now before it runs out, because as far as I know, Games Workshop consistently doesn't reprint their starter box set, which again is crazy to me. I don't know why you don't want more people to get in on the game by offering everything discounted, bundled together. But again, that's one of the ways that GW is really crazy. And remember, you know, about 5-6 years ago when the first edition of Kill Team came out, that starter box was $130. So within a span of 6 years, it has increased $100, almost twice as much since 6 years ago. So just know that there is going to be, seems like, no end to the increase in prices that GW is having on its products. But if you think that is crazy, the box set doesn't even come with data cards for the two factions that are found inside of it. Also, the rulebook is lacking all of the rules for the equipment. Now, to be fair, you can download those rules for free on their website, but still, why they didn't include the rules for the equipment inside of this, all the universal equipment, that is just puzzling to me. I have no idea why they chose to do that and kept that separate. Also, the fact that you don't get data cards, because all of the stats for both of the factions that you find in there is found in this dossier. But what's crazy about that is you can't share this book with the person you're playing with. So as you're looking up the stats for one of your characters, you got to look that up and then hand it to your opponent to look up for the sting wings. So this is totally impractical in terms of having no data cards, separate data cards for the factions that are found in there. Now, what do you do if you want to play factions from the previous versions that you have? So for example, my novitiates, these are second edition. I got it from a box set from the second edition. Obviously, it's not going to come with updated stat cards or anything like that, but you do have the option to purchase these stat cards for them, which contain all of the data cards, but also the faction-specific tactics and ops and options and equipment. So you are able to purchase them, but this is over $30 for this card pack, which is nuts to me. Now, you do get all of the cards for the universal equipment. Again, not sure why that's not included in the base box, but you have to spend $30 to purchase this thing. The other crazy thing is if you want the faction-specific tokens, it's not coming with this box, which it should at that price point. Instead, you have to re-buy those miniatures in a box set for that faction in order to get the punch-out cardboard tokens, which again is nuts to me. Why they wouldn't bundle those two things together for people who already own the miniatures from previous sets, that's a crazy thing. For my novitiates, I did go ahead and just download all of their data cards. I printed them out and I cut them out on cardstock, which again works perfectly fine, so you don't have to invest all that money. But the fact that you don't have universal equipment on cards that you can have, it's just a little bit strange, and it's a way for them just to bring more money from you. The other thing that's crazy is right off the bat, there is a huge imbalance with the forces. So basically, a couple of other YouTubers have mentioned this. you cannot play elite factions against regular army factions like this, or the two that come in the base box. So playing any iterations of Space Marines, including Chaos Space Marines, where they are elite teams of only 5 or 6 units, versus the normal ones, which are about 10, like you see here, you really can't do that because they will steamroll all of the regular army factions. So if you're going to play an elite team, you need to play against another elite team. So I'm not quite sure why right off the bat they have that huge power differential between the elite teams versus the non-elites. So yeah, that's crazy. And then finally, and I want to recognize that this is just personal taste in terms of my tolerance level of how complicated the rule sets are, but this game still is too complicated for a skirmish game. It is not enough rules being streamlined where I can just sort of dive in and have some fun chucking the dice. Again, my sort of standard for that or comparison for that is Warcry, which I think is simple enough. You can get a game in about an hour. This game definitely is not an hour. It takes about 3 hours to go through 4 turns. So that is not a simple game. And in fact, I think it might be faster if you did have an elite army where you only had 5 or 6 units on the board, because it takes a long time to go through 10 different units, especially when each single unit has its own data card and each unit does something different or has different equipment to it. So that is a lot of stats, a lot of differences between each one. And again, I know some of you love that amount of detail. I know that some of you love that amount of options and you don't mind a 3-hour game. But for me, I would much rather play a quicker game and multiple times in an afternoon than just be able to get one game, especially if I know right off the bat that I'm probably going to lose. That's a long time commitment to be in a game. So I'd much rather play with a simplified rule set that is paced a lot more quickly than something like this iteration of Kill Team. Now, I might change my mind once I play the co-op version if I'm playing with a friend where we're not competing against each other and we're both trying to achieve the same objectives. I haven't played that version yet, and I'm hoping that I will enjoy that more, even if it takes a couple of hours to play that version. But who knows? At this point, the rule set definitely is not simplified. For example, they have cover rules, which they tried to simplify, but they also have something called obscured. I don't know the difference between the two. I don't know why I would use one over the other. I probably have to go and read it again. But even yesterday when we were playing, we kept misremembering like what the effects of cover was and obscured and when to use which. That's just one small example of where the rules can be too complicated. And you would think that in the rule book, they would put both the covered and the obscured rules right next to each other with a diagram showing you what the difference is between the two, but they don't do that. So the rulebook, and this is always the case with Games Workshop rulebooks, it's not intuitive or super clear where to find certain rules once you read through it. I mean, there aren't a lot of rules, to be fair, but I feel like they just never provide enough examples in the book. They do with movement and some of the cover rules, which make it clear, but I wish that there was just a little bit more details, multiple examples of the rules playing out, because now we just have to go online and figure out how other people are interpreting it. Also, I think there's just too many options. So when you're setting up for a scenario, you have to not only pick a scouting step, but there are tac ops that you are picking and choosing. You have to choose also a primary op, and then there are ploys, 8 of them that are faction specific. There's 4 different things that you have to be thinking about even before you start that first initial step of moving people around. And that's one of the things that drove me crazy about playing either 40K or Age of Sigmar, is that there are so many different options that you can pick that I just don't care. I just picked them randomly because I just wanted to get started. I don't want to think about it that much. Again, there are people that really like that amount of flexibility and uniqueness in creating what they want out of their army and sort of doing the calculus of what's the most efficient. But for me, I'm not that kind of gamer. I'm a casual gamer. I do it primarily to be able to hang out with my friends and have fun. And I just don't do that math in my head. That's just not fun for me. I'm not a min-maxer. Again, some people are and they really enjoy that aspect of it. But in my mind, it just slows down the pace of the game. It gets us too focused on looking things up in the rule book. And it just sort of kills the vibe of us just having fun and being able to hang out with each other. I don't mind doing list building or anything like that, but when it's that complicated, it just sort of kills any desire for me to put this on the table when there's so many other games that I can throw on there and get right into the action. But it's going to be at least a half hour of setup and figuring things out, picking all of your cards or your tactics that you want to play before you even start moving your first miniature. But I will say, even though it's a 3-hour game, it's still better than 40K. If only for the fact that you are alternating turns. I move one of my guys, the other person moves one of their guys, so we're going back and forth. None of these, I move my entire army, you move your army, we all shoot, none of those shenanigans, which I don't know why Games Workshop continues to hold on to that as part of their mass army rule set when everyone else has abandoned that. I don't know a single other wargaming rule set that keeps that you go, I go rule set. So at least they're not doing that here in Kill Team. So even though it's a long game, you can play a 40K game probably in 3 to 6 hours. I would still much rather play this than any of the mass army battle games from GW. So conclusion is, even though I think that they did address some of the complications of the rules and simplified it a little bit more, I am glad that they did provide other ways to gain victory points where actually shooting and killing units matter now. I still find myself being reluctant to pull this out when there are so many other better options than this. And again, a lot of that is personal taste because I don't want that level of complexity in my games. Again, as a casual player, I want something that's simple, that I can teach really quickly, that people aren't taking too seriously, and I want to be able to get a game in around an hour, hour and a half, and you're just not going to get that with this. So some of the alternatives that I would suggest to you is Dead Zone, which I think is the perfect amount of being able to customize your army and your units, but makes movement and line of sight rules and bonuses and using 8-sided dice. If you haven't seen my video, even though it's old, it's still relevant. Go ahead and check it out here where I show why Dead Zone is superior over Kill Team. I still think both of these now in the 3rd edition, it is still true. Many of the points that I pointed out back then is still true. And Mantic, who created Dead Zone, just came out with a new version, which is even a simpler rule set that is based off of Dead Zone. Just picked this up. Halo Flashpoint, which uses the Dead Zone rules mechanic, but now you are dealing with not as much variation in the Spartans that you get to choose on your side, and it comes with also colored terrain. You don't even have to paint the terrain. So I think this is an amazing box if you want to get into especially wargaming. This is simpler than Dead Zone, easier to play. So if you, after playing this, you like the rule set, you want to take a step up, then you can get the full version of Dead Zone 3rd edition. Heck, if you want a simpler rule set, go ahead and instead of buying Hivestorm, buy the beginner box set, which is the Kill Team starter set, which is about half the price of this at $110. If you can find it. Again, so many of Games Workshop products sell out really quickly, or they don't make enough, or they intentionally stop producing it after a while. But I know that they have simplified rules there. They are both elite teams, so you only have 5 or 6 to each side. A lot more easier to handle than 10 different unique units on a side. I didn't buy it because obviously I got Hivestorm, but I've heard that that's an easier game and an easier way to get into Kill Team. Other good option is one-page rules. They have Grimdark Future, which is their mass army battle, which I've played before, and I can get a full 2,000 point army battle in an hour and a half. So I would much rather play that than this version of Kill Team. They also have a skirmish version, Grimdark Future Firefight. So if you want to play with your miniatures here that you've already gotten from Games Workshop and want to play a skirmish game, their firefight rules are really awesome too. Very easy to learn, very easy to pick up. In fact, most of the OPR rules, their bones and DNA are similar across all of their systems. So once you know one set, you pretty much know how to play all of their different games. And finally, I just backed the rulebook for Trench Crusade, which, raised $3 million. Their rules are available right now. They're beta version, but you can download them right now and you can use those rules with your GW miniatures, or if you want to kit bash them to make them look more grungy, you can do that. But those rules are available now. I watched a couple playthroughs and those rules are a lot more quick and simpler than what's found here. So my final verdict is I do regret going back to my hot but crazy girlfriend because she is still crazy, she is still complicated, and she's still a gold digger. And so I don't necessarily regret purchasing it because I love the terrain, I love all the models that come in the starter box set, but I think I'm going to go ahead and with my friend still try out the co-op version, but for the most part I think I'm going to be adapting and using all of these as proxies into One Page Rules Firefight version. So if you are into Kill Team, what do you think about the 3rd edition rules? And if you have tried out some of the other alternatives like Mantic Games, Dead Zone, and One Page Rules, what do you think? Do you agree with my comments or my thoughts? Go ahead and make comments below. Hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoy this material. I'll continue to come out with videos showcasing and reviewing different game systems. Otherwise, happy gaming. We'll see you next time.